Yo, what's up, Guardians? All right, let me situate myself. Get some water. Stuff like that. All right. So let me show you how to take a paycheck. And there's a few ways to think about this. And again, you guys may come up with something something that makes more sense. But let me organize this. Expectation management. Slow the fuck down. Seriously. Some of you, and not just Guardians, but everybody has been working for 5 years on their business, and they're just starting to make money, and then they think that they're supposed to somehow take a paycheck in a sustainable way in 12 days in crypto, and you guys just keep wrecking yourselves. It's amazing. So you have these short time preferences, but no evidence of that working, right? There's no evidence that you've been able to start something and sustainably make a paycheck in 30 days. If there was, you wouldn't be here worried about trying to make a paycheck, right? So even the reality is, I always talk about time preference. Even people that have short time preferences in their real world have never actually been able to deliver on their own time preference. It's really important to realize that, in my opinion, of course. So, let's get into to just be stop rushing. I know everything's urgent. I get it. You want to get out of your business. You got bills to pay. All that crap. I get it. The more you rush, the harder you push, the further you're going to get from actually achieving any of that stuff. Just work it. Make it happen. Okay? I'm checking my updates here. So, if you do X, you do not get it, okay? And that's okay. Do whatever you want, but I'm telling you right now, if you do X, you don't get it. If you sell night or dark night, you don't get it. There's something is missing in your framework, the golden goose, okay? If you sell base assets without fully closing the gap, if you sell off a little bit of guard and a little bit of night and whatever, right? All that tells me is that you tried to rush. There should not be anything sitting in your base that you need to take right now. And if there is, if you're paying attention, if your base is guard BUSD, right? You're like, oh, I need to pay some bills. Then you would unpair it and you would take the BUSD, right? And you would leave the guard or the night because they both have ongoing power in the buying power or otherwise in the ecosystem. No judgment outside of the fact that if you think you understand it and you're doing things like that, you don't. There's no reason to sell a base asset unless it fully closes the gap, because you should have the awareness to just unpair it and take the paired asset, the BUSD or the BNB, right? There's a lot of all or nothing thinking. People, what I share today is going to make hopefully sense, but people are going to have a hard time with it because they want to be all in or all out, and that's exactly why you blow yourself up. You either get to where you want to be or you don't. And guess what? You never get to where you want to be as fast as you want. So the answer is you don't. You got to start over, yada, yada, yada. So you do not get it if you're selling base assets unless selling base assets fully closes the gap. It fully funds everything for you, in which case, awesome, you made it. Sell whatever you want. You win life. Hey, it also depends on frequency and starting capital. I'm going to show you some stuff, and what's going to happen is you're going to go, ooh, I can shortcut it by doing this. And you move stuff around thinking it's a shortcut. You don't get it. This is the shortcut. This process is the shortcut. It is from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in a very short amount of time if you allow it to work. Every time, this is how compounding works. Every time you move stuff around thinking it's a shortcut, you just took 10 steps backwards. Every time. Sometimes you got to take 10 steps backwards because you realize, right? Oh, I'm at a dead end. So if you're at a dead end and you know you're at a dead end, you got to backtrack, right? But you don't take 10 steps faster or 10 steps backwards when you got a straight line ahead of you. Doesn't make any sense. And I'll talk about that maze in a minute. Okay, now we have to remember frequency because APY is backloaded. That's how math works, which means, let's say you get 20% APY on $100,000. Okay, you're going to get $20,000 a year. But most of that capital is going to be backloaded because it compounds, right? So let's say $24,000 a year to make the math easy. That's not $2,000 a month, right? It might be like $900 the first month and $950 the second month and $1,100 the month after that. The last 2 months of the year will be significantly larger than the first two because that's how compounding works. So you have to really think, like, if you need to take a weekly paycheck or a monthly paycheck, you're going to be slightly handicapped. If you can just take your pay, this is what I do in crypto, you just take your pay once a year. If you need a monthly income, you probably are just very bad at managing money. There's not really a difference between taking 24 grand at the end of the year or 2 grand a month, right? It just, a lot of people don't do that because they don't know how to manage their money. So they're afraid if they take 24 grand, they're going to blow it. So there's this weird need for consistency, which is fine. But you have to understand that you are handicapping yourself. The more frequently you need to take a paycheck, the less options you have because you are not allowing things to compound. So in a perfect world, in a vacuum where everybody behaved in a way that made perfect sense logically, you probably pay yourself once a year from crypto, right? So if you need 200 grand a year, at the end of the year, you take 200 grand out and then you would just manage it like an adult, which is hard to do, I know. And you would make that last for the year. Otherwise, you're swimming upstream because you're not allowing things to compound, okay? So just remember that APY is backloaded. It's backloaded. The last 2 or 3 months of the year are going to be significantly larger. It's going to make up a majority of that APY. All right, so we use auto compounders and raids to do this. Now, I hope this makes sense that the APY is backloaded. It intuitively, it should be really obvious. So if you go to like a compounding calculator, I'll show you this real quick, and you say, whatever number that is, 100% a year, 10 years. So you get $1.5 million. What is that? 150 grand a year? Whatever that is. It's like 150 grand a year. I think there's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there we go. $1.5 billion. That's why it didn't make sense. But you'll see here, year 1, 161,000. Year 2, 500,000. Year 3, you see how these numbers get bigger and bigger? That's how compounding works. So you can't say, all right, I'm going to have 1.5 billion. That's 1.5 million a year. Because it's not. It's not on year 1. It's not 1.5 million. Right? So you just have to realize that if you do APY calculations and you go, cool, $1 million a year in yield, that's awesome. $1 million a year is not $83,000 a month, which is what you're going to try to do. You're going to try to go a million, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divided by 12. Oh, cool. I'm going to make $83,000 a month, but you're not. You're going to make less than that on month 1 and a lot more than that on month 12. It will average out to 83 grand a month. It will not get there if you actually take $83,000 a month because it's not compounding. So I'll show you a few different ways to think about this. But it's also built this way. Okay. People say dumb shit like begin with the end in mind. Close, but not really, because when you start a maze, right, you're beginning with the end in mind. You're starting here with the intent of making it out here. Beginning with the end in mind is not the same as inverting or backing into something. People just say shit and don't really know what it means. So people go, oh, that makes sense. Begin with the end in mind. No, motherfucker, that's not what I'm saying. Everybody begins with the end in mind. They go, I want $1 million, and they start working with the goal of $1 million. It's beginning with the end in mind. What we actually want to do is invert. We want to back into it. So when you begin with the end in mind, this happens. You start on a path, and then you realize it's a dead end. So then you backtrack, and you go down another path, and you realize it's a dead end, and then you got to backtrack. Remember, backtracking takes time and resources. So at this point, spend a lot of time and resources to get kind of there. Right? All right, you navigate it, and then boom, oh, this is a dead end. Oh, this is a dead end. All right. Oh, that's a dead end. Right, so beginning with the end in mind is incredibly inefficient. This is not new either. Like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett have been talking about inverting the process for decades. What we do is we back into it. We start here. Watch how much easier this is to navigate. Boom, there, right? Much less likely to hit hangups. So it's not beginning with the end in mind. It's starting at the end and backing into the start. Of course, we want to start where we're at because we always feel like it's faster, and you do have to start where you're at. But sometimes you got to find a different starting spot, which means you might have to take some time to get into the spot you need to be in order to get to where you want to be. Okay, this is... To me, it seems very obvious. Some people struggle with it. So this is why we back into things. I always say, yeah, we're going to back into it. Everybody else just wants to bang their head up against the wall. We're just going to work backwards. It's so much more efficient. Next time you see a maze in a newspaper, go buy a maze book. Try them forward, try them backwards. You're going to see how much faster it is and how much less effort it takes to work a maze backwards. Everything in life that is complex is the same way. Just back into it. Back into it. Okay? Don't begin with the end in mind. That's just the most ridiculous rhetoric. So this is what we do. We're talking about a paycheck today. Okay? I'm going to show you again the ideal world. There are a ton of variations of this. Do not overthink it. Do not move all your stuff around, think you're going to find a shortcut. It's not a shortcut. The process is the freaking shortcut. So here is the fastest path. If we assume 100%, which at this point is safe to do, let me show you. If we assume 100%, this gets 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 100%. So the evidence suggests that there's actually none of these that are not going to get 100% except for Wizard. Okay? So the shortest path, which is also the most fragile, is if you need $100,000 a year, have $100,000 of extra night and use the raids. Sell them as frequently as you want because that's APR. Sell the raids every day, sell them every week. That wasn't so complicated, right? But it's still fragile. The price of night could change. The raids could change. The market could change. Everything is fragile. Everything that stands in isolation is fragile. Putting your money in an FDIC-insured bank is fragile. If that's the only thing you're doing. So this is the short one. Okay, and we assume 100%. We can keep really, really easy math. I know, but this gets 140. Why don't I do the math at 140? I'll get there faster. Because we build a base case to lock in what we want. We don't try to push for best case because we're going to blow ourselves up if we do. Okay, so really, really simple here. And we're going to have pools where you stake night and get BUSD or BNB, right? So the other mistake is if you're trying to solve all of your problems right now, you're making a huge mistake. That's it's a very human thing to do. Talk about it all the time. Let's just get in the best position possible because you are delusional, just like I am delusional, if I think I know what is coming. If I think I know that everything I see right now is all I will have to work with, I will not conceive of any new ideas tomorrow. There won't be any new tools tomorrow. Therefore, I have to create an airtight system with what I have now. It's ridiculous. So we're just trying to get in the best position possible. So the broad stroke is we can assume 100% on raids. So if we need to make 50 grand a year on top of building our base case and all that stuff, then we need an extra 50K of night. If we need 100 grand a year, we need an extra 100K a night. I imagine many of you that have been thinking about this have made it way more complicated than that. You probably, some of you probably built spreadsheets going, all right, well, at 169.92%, why the hell would you do that math? You know this is going to change tomorrow. What we do know, as per evidence, is that they all stay over 100. That is the only math I would be comfortable doing, because we're talking about your livelihood. We're not talking about like fun and games. Right? So step one, the most fragile, the shortest time frame. Do not take apart your base case to do this, because you're shooting yourself in the foot out of greed and trying to expedite things, and you're going to end up with less money. If you need $100,000 a year, start working towards accumulating $100,000 of night. The raids and the pools will provide. Of course, things can happen, but this is the fastest, most reliable path on this time preference. Okay? Stake your night, sell off the raids. Make sense? So, of course, there's more raids coming and all that stuff. Now, if you want to build a robust machine, this is what I would do. I would sit in something like this. This is an auto-compounder. Guard BUSD is fine as well. I just use Night BUSD because Night is a thing that you can accumulate for free the fastest. So, we back into it. If we need 100K, this is what we do. Night BUSD. It gets well over... Do I have it open still? No. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at this, and you're going to try to go best case. You're going to try to make this fantasy scenario, and you're going to blow yourself up. This APY is astronomical, okay? But if we plan for this, we're going to blow ourselves up, because our job is to actually bring this down. This is not good. I've taught about APY and token emissions. You do not want this APY going up, because that means your yield is going up, but the price of your total portfolio could be going down. I don't want to get into that. You should understand that by now. Okay, so we can assume 100%. No question about it. We can assume 100% given the evidence, right? You don't have to. You can choose 70 if you want. But look how this works. If you could start with $200,000 and leave it for a year, and we assume 100% APY, you're going to have $400,000 in there, right? Half of it's Night, half of it's BUSD. This is where people stop thinking. They stop using their brain, because it's all or nothing thinking, right? They don't necessarily think of this as two separate assets that can be branched off to do two separate things. So again, start at 200. If we assume 100%, at the end of the year, we have 400K. We can break this. We can take half of this, leave the other half in. So this is on autopilot. This is self-sustaining. Okay. When we break this, we get 100K of BUSD. There's your year one paycheck. Notice how we didn't sell any house assets, right? Because we're smarter than that. We're thinking a few steps ahead. And you have 100K a night, which can now be placed in pools, right? So now you have your 100K paycheck, and next year you're going to get this again, plus another 100K here. You just doubled your paycheck. You doubled your paycheck without putting any new capital in or killing the golden goose. You just do that over and over and over, right? So this is the kind of multidimensional thinking that I'm trying to encourage, and it's to be transparent, it's difficult for me because this is so obvious. Like, this is the first time I've ever written it down. This is what it looks like in my head, and this is how I behave. But I'm realizing that people are struggling with this. So you can back right into it, right? If you want $100,000 paycheck, boom, and you want to grow it significantly without killing the golden goose, then you would need 400K in here after a year, which means you need 200K to start here. And if you're not there, that's okay. This is where you know you need to get to put it on autopilot. Again, I'll walk you through some math as well. If you have, you can do math. These are very easy numbers. So if you don't have 200K, you want to do 50K, that's fine. If you had 50K here, you'd have 100K at the end of the year. You could take 50 as a paycheck, just straight BUSD. You could put 50 in night. Next year, you'll still have 50 in here when you start the year. Okay? You will still get 100 in here. You will still take your $50,000 paycheck here, and you will have another $50,000 bonus from these night raids. This is with no new capital coming in. No new capital coming. This is self-sustaining. Your treasury is growing. Your paycheck is growing. The fact that this is not clicking without me teaching it means that I'm dropping the ball on explaining how this stuff works, and I'm working really hard on trying to get better at it. So another way to look at it is here. I need to make $50,000 a year. Okay? Cool. So if I have $100,000 in my base, I don't have anything in raids right now. This is example. You might have something in raids. At the end of the year, so this is year end, there's $200,000, right? Because we assume 100%. That means I can take 50, and let's assume that I'm putting 100 back in here, which means I have an extra 50, right? So I got 200. 50 I'm taking as a paycheck. 50 is just extra night that I have. This is BUSD. This is night. So what I do is I put that $50,000 of extra night in my raids. So now I have a $100,000 base. I'm assuming 200% on this, and I'm assuming 100% on this, 100% on this. That means I have 200. You want to take a paycheck of 50 again? That's fine. Now you have significantly more overage because only 100 is going back into here, right? You could actually take a bigger paycheck if you wanted to. This paycheck would be, because you have your base where you're just taking half of the paired profit, and you're working your raids. So now your paycheck, and you still have an overage here, right? 150, 250, you still have your $50,000 overage. Now here's where it gets crazy. You still have all of this night, so now you have $100,000 in raids. Right? You see how these numbers will get ridiculous without putting any new capital in? I could have built this spreadsheet better, but it's just not like, I don't know that it needs to be more granular than this, and if it does, then your brain just may not be oriented toward wealth, unfortunately. But you see how this is growing significantly by auto compounding. Let me find it here. We'll do here. Auto compounding this. Okay. Only taking the profits out so that the golden goose remains intact. And then you split this pair. BUSD, you just take as money night. You build a secondary goose here. So this stays stable. This stays about 200 grand. Right? This ends at 400 grand every year. This is the same. This is the reliability piece in this scenario. But you're taking a paycheck of 100 grand a year, and this pool continues to grow because we never sell it. So every year we just add 100 grand to this pool, which means if we assume 100%, we add $100,000 to our paycheck every year. That's with no additional capital into the ecosystem. Okay, so again, most people are just going to try to go, oh, I can just sell off this night. And like, cool. That is why you don't have millions of dollars of crypto. Because the fact that this isn't obvious to people is alarming. So hopefully this makes sense on a zoomed out scale. I'll go through it one more time just for walkthroughs and stuff. Even if you start, look at this. Even if you start, you need a $50,000 paycheck. Yep. This was the right math here. Okay. In this example, every year you're adding $50,000 of night to your raids. So you have $200,000 in raids alone, right? Every year you're keeping $100,000 in your base. Okay. See how this grows alone? These raids alone are growing your paycheck. These raids and pools. This would be 200. This would be 400. Right, you could take a much bigger paycheck if you wanted. You could have much more overage. You're always going to have $50,000 of overage in this example. And that overage gets kicked off into raids, which is why this grows $50,000 every year. Hopefully this makes sense. Again, we're looking at, this is where it compounds. So remember, we're some 100%. So the total is this doubles and this doubles. So 200, 300. You can kind of see how this pattern gets played out here. That's with no extra capital, and that is with a growing paycheck. Your base stays the same, right? You could easily kick these. You could kick these raids back into the base and grow the base. There's a million variations of this, but this is a very straightforward way. And you don't have to like start here. If you need, also people need like an extra 50 grand a year passively would change your life, and they're greedy a-holes. Like, I need $400,000 a year. I need to replace all of my income. Like, just change your life a little bit. So if you needed $20K, a $20,000 paycheck, right? I believe you need $40K in here. You would end with 80, right? You would put 40 of it. You would just leave 40 of it. So you would take out 40K. 20 of it would be here. 20 would be here. And then you would make an extra 20 grand next year off your raids. Like, look how much fucking money is adding up. And like, I say you people, I don't mean guardians. I just mean people are so fucking greedy and so short-sighted that like, you could start with 40K. You can start right here. Take a $20,000 paycheck every year. And it starts to accumulate really quickly because the overage gets kicked here. You keep your base at 40. You don't have to grow that base if it's a paycheck base. Yeah, I would grow my base if it's a treasury or savings or wealth, like wealth acceleration, but we're talking about a paycheck, right? So 80, this now is 120. You see how this is growing already? You could take $20,000 a year if you wanted, but really you could take 40. You still have this $20,000 overage, and you would just continue this trend on. It would take you 3 years, 4 years, 5 years till you're 6 figures in passive income a year. So I struggle with people that complicate it. That's why this had to be guardian only call. Million variations. This is where like you really have to think critically for yourself. You can use guard, BUSD. You can use night BNB. Like maybe you prefer BNB over BUSD. That's fine. Even BNB BUSD is getting over 100% right now. That's not going to last forever. So you could ride that until it stops and then flip into a night BUSD. There's a million variations of this. So conceptually, that's what we want to do. We just back into it. Right? You could say if I need to make $20,000 paycheck and serve all these things, then I need double that in the base. Just for paycheck purposes. Notice how the base is not growing. This is not a treasury strategy. This is not a FU wealth accumulation strategy. This is I'm going to pay all of my bills, and even with this paycheck, you can kick it into a treasury strategy. This could be a treasury strategy if you took a lot of this overage and started adding it to the base, this is what I do. My treasury is also my paycheck. But people are struggling for some reason with navigating multiple assets. So you might want to build a treasury that's just auto compounding, and then separately, you might want to build a paycheck for yourself. That seems to be easier to manage, but mine is the same. Right, so I'm actually not going to take this paycheck because I get so much yield. Like, I don't need that much money to live. So I will take only what I need to pay my bills, and I will put the rest in the top so that mine grows much, much quicker than the example that we just showed. But people have a very hard time, like with LP. People have a very hard time understanding that LP is multiple tokens, and you can remove 20% of your LP, and then you can split it, and you can use one of the assets to do one thing, like put it in raids, and you can use the other asset to pay bills, like BUSD. For some reason, people have a very hard time navigating all that in real time. So hopefully that's helpful. At the end of the day, the place to start is you can assume 100%. Okay, that's relatively safe. Not over years and years and years and years, but we're talking about a paycheck. Okay, very important distinction. Very, very important distinction. Our base case is 70% a year because we want to make hundreds of millions of dollars. If we're talking about working, actively managing in order to take a paycheck, we can assume a little bit higher APR because we are actively moving things around in order to get paid. So to assume 100%, yeah, these raids, some of these raids go away. Sometimes there's new raids. Like, you have to move stuff around. So taking a paycheck is different than building a base case for a long term. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. You can let me know if you have any questions. Just watch this a few times and kind of try to wrap your mind around, like, you can put something in auto compounder. A year later, you come back, you take half of it. Everybody's all or nothing. They're either like going to sell it all or leave it all in, which is ridiculous. Like, there's a ton of gray area that's very, very effective. You could take half of this or 25% of this, remove it from the LP, split it, pay yourself with the BUSD, put the night in a raid for more BUSD. Right? If you sell the night, you don't understand what's going on. If you remove 100% of any of this, you don't understand what's going on. And if you leave everything in all the time and you can't figure out how to pay yourself, you don't understand what's going on. If you're sitting in Night BUSD or Night BNB or Guard BUSD and you're like, I don't have any dry powder, but I'm in a really stressful place, you do have dry powder. You do. Unpair your Guard and BUSD or your Night BNB, and that BNB or that BUSD is dry powder. Like, these are all assets that are working together. Do not, yes, this does make an LP token, but do not forget that these are two separate assets that have two separate purposes. That's why they pair well together. That's why like a stable, do I have a stable in here? USDC, USDT doesn't get high APY because they're two of the same exact assets. There's not a lot of utility in pairing them together. So just understand that, like, if you're an auto compounder or you're in a farm, you have multiple assets. You have Night and you have BNB. If you're in these two farms right here, you have 4 assets. Do not forget that you have 4 assets that have different properties. Shit, I gotta pay my bills. I don't know. And you remove Night BNB. You remove half your Night BNB and you sell it. Why the hell would you why would you move half your Night BNB, turn your BNB into cash, sell your Night? Why wouldn't you just remove all of your LP, only get rid of your BNB to pay your bills, and put your Night somewhere where it's making you more money? Like, people do this all the time. Like, oh, I sold half my LP tokens. Like, what the hell would you do that for? Why not just unpair all of them and use the currency that it's paired with, keep the Night, and put it somewhere it's going to make you more money. And it's just because people don't fully understand what is going on here. So they keep shooting themselves in the foot. Like, I know people they're selling Dark Knight to accumulate more Phantom. Get this. So that they can buy more Dark Knight. Like, this is the kind of weird shit that people are doing. Because they just click buttons and it just makes sense to them, and they don't really zoom out and think, like, wait a minute, what am I really trying to accomplish? Why would I sell Dark Knight in order to have more buying power to buy Dark Knight? And it's a ridiculous example, but people are doing it. So it's not that ridiculous. And this is what everybody's doing with their treasuries and their paychecks, is like they're making these super complicated. Like, look how simple this is. Put it in there, don't touch it, let it double, take it out, take what you need for your bills, put the rest back in. End. There's no reason to complicate it beyond that. The actual math, if you assume $100,000 a year, be very conservative, right? What do you really actually need? You do not need to replace your whole business income by the end of January. That's ridiculous. That's not a realistic thing. Like, that's not, in real life, that's not a thing. So let's not aim for things that don't exist in real life. But hey, look, if an extra 40 grand at the end of next year would open up a lot of possibilities for you and you have a path to get there, cool. How do we do that? We get 80 grand in our base here. At the end of the year, we take it out, we split it, we pay ourselves, we build. Right? This is a strategy to never have to sell Dark Knight, and you can see Dark Knight, and you can see how quickly it compounds. The people that do this, the people that are rushing, trying to shortcut, are going to end up in the same place in 3 or 4 years. The people that are paying attention and do it this way are going to have so much money, and we're going to call them lucky, and we're going to wonder why it didn't work for us, and but we did everything right, and then we're going to find excuses as to why we did what we did. Well, you don't understand. I needed, we got in a tight spot, and we needed some money. Like, I understand that. It still doesn't make sense why you would sell half your LP tokens instead of unpairing all of it and only using the B&B. What you did was you cut off half your buying power when you didn't have to. I'm not saying you don't have real world problems. I'm saying the way that you handle them was rushed and unsophisticated, right? You handled your problems in a way that gave you more problems later on. Okay. So I'll work on this. I don't have a ton of time today. I got some stuff I got to do, but we'll circle back and we'll have a conversation. I'll try to build out a better example of this here on a spreadsheet. Okay. But just understand that auto compounders are magical. If you can give yourself 1 year of time preference, there is very few things you cannot achieve by understanding how to use an auto compounder and being comfortable splitting assets. Okay, appreciate you guys. This replay will be up, and we'll